One of the reasons I like Adobe Fresco so much is because of its unique motion features. A lot of people assume that Adobe Fresco is just like Procreate and that there's just simple frame-by-frame animation. But Adobe Fresco has a lot of other stuff you can do with animation, and it makes a lot of stuff super easy. That said, some things can be a little bit tricky, and sometimes you kind of have to figure out different ways to get it to do the things that you want it to do. In this video, I'm going to share a bunch of ways to get the most out of motion in Adobe Fresco and show you some tricks to get around some of the limitations. Let's get into it. Aside from the fact that each layer can have its own animation, one of my favorite things is that you can combine frame-by-frame animation, which is like the kind of animation you can do in Procreate, where it's just, you know, like a flip book. You can do that in Fresco, obviously, but you can also add that sequence to a path. So let me show you what I mean. I got this I got this guy here, and I did this little sequence where it's just flapping its wings. But it doesn't really look like it's flying or doing anything because it needs some overall movement. So let me show you what we can do. If we just click on this path option at the bottom of our motion tools, there's all these built-in motion presets that do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to use these, but let's just try some of these out. Like for example, this bounce one, we just tap that and already, look at this little guy bouncing around. Pretty great. We could try this bob. See, I think that one's kind of perfect. However, the angle is getting a little bit aggressive. So what we could do is come over here to our settings and then just drag this angle thing down a little bit till we get it to a spot that we like. And I think that's pretty perfect. You could go in and control more of these settings, but I think this is perfect for what we wanted. Let's say you had a specific way you wanted this thing to move. Instead of using one of these presets, you can just tap on that X to get rid of the path. You could simply just draw the path that you want this thing to follow. So maybe you wanted like a specific loop that it's going to do. So I could just do that. It's going to follow that loop. You can go into the settings and change the way that it follows that path. You could slow it down by adding in more frames. So you could drag this like all the way up and it's going to go really slow around that sequence, or drag the frames all the way down and it's going to go super fast around that. There's also something called uniform speed or original speed. The original speed is the speed at which you drew the path. So you could do a path where you like go slow and then fast and then slow and fast. And then we switch this to original speed and then it's going to be like slow, slow. Pretty neat. Let's put it back on this path where it's just doing the little, the bob. We'll do the bob. Bring that down. Now, let's say there was another one of these things, but this one is mad and it's flying super fast. And we want this to go flying across the screen. If we were doing this in an app that just had one timeline and simple frame-by-frame animation, if you wanted something to be moving at a faster speed, it would be complicated. But before we can do that, we got to talk about something else. We got to get this frame-by-frame loop to make sense. So let's focus on this little thing. I've drawn 3 frames, but I did 4 here. And the reason I did 4 is because our other little guy, that sequence is 4 frames. So because each layer gets its own timeline, one thing you have to be mindful for is that your sequences need to line up with each other in terms of numbers. Let me explain this with a little bit of math. Let's say one of our sequences has 4 frames, and it does. And our other one has 3 frames. The 4 frame loop would get to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the first one would be like 1, 2, 3, and then it would reset, and it would go back to 1, while the first one is at 4, and then that one resets, and then they get out of sync, and then chaos ensues. So when you got a whole bunch of these things, there's a lot going on. However, if one of these was 8 and the other one was 4, it would be fine because the 4 sequence could go through 4, start over, go through 4 again, and they would both end at the same point and restart. So they just need to be compatible. I think there's a specific word for it. I don't know what it is, but that's what you need to remember. So anyway, we got to that because we needed to add in an additional frame to this sequence. And when you need to add on to one to the end, or if you just want to figure out how to make a sequence look a little bit more smooth, one thing that I like to do is go back to the first frame and duplicate that and then drag it to the end. And I'm just putting this here as a temporary thing so that I can use it as a visual guide for drawing the last frame. So when we click on the last frame and we have our onion skins turned on, which is in the settings, we can see where this last frame is and then where the next one is. So what we can do is just draw a halfway point in between the two, and that'll make that sequence more fluid, and we can delete that last frame. So what I'm going to do is just draw a position for these wings that is just in between those 2 points, between the green and the purple. And now we can go ahead and delete that last frame because we were just using that as a reference. So now if we play this, we see we got this little sequence and it's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and color it in. One thing to note, if you did want to color on a separate layer, you can use reference layers, but if you're going to combine it with a path, you do want to be careful because you can't use a path on a group, which hopefully they change soon, and hopefully that's not an issue anymore, because that would be helpful. That is one thing that I want. Well, I want a lot of things, but that's one that would improve my quality of life with animation. Okay, so now we've got these two things happening, and clearly this one is cruising, it's going fast, and we want it to fly across the screen. The issue is this one is going nice and slow, and it's kind of chill. So how would we do that? Well, it's easy because each layer gets its own timeline. Remember we talked about this? So what we can do here is just draw a path from the beginning to the end. I like to start outside and then go past, and that way we have some room so it doesn't like start in the frame a little bit. And let's say that's still not fast enough. We can come down here to our frames and we can bring this down as low as we want, and that's flying real fast. So I'm gonna put this at, let's try 16, because again, when we're doing paths, we need this. This is where it needs to be compatible. So that's the frames we want to pay attention to. So 16 is fine because there's 4 in the other one, so it'll happen 4 times. Sometimes you gotta have a calculator when you're doing animation. So now if we play all, we can see that thing is just flying real fast in the background, which, hey, it's fine, but you may be thinking, that's fine and all, but I feel like it shouldn't be going that long. Like it shouldn't be looping that many times. Like we need a little bit more breathing room. So what you can do is just extend that path even longer. You could just exit out and redraw it, or you can tap on this path thing and go to transform path, and we could just drag this out pretty far. You could go like this if you want. And now when we hit play, we're not seeing it for a while. And it's also going a lot faster because the path is longer, so it has to go across that. So it's just like through the screen. And maybe we want to adjust that. Like maybe it's going too fast now because the path is so long. I think that's pretty good. Maybe we want it to look like it's going far away. So we could turn on the grow shrink. We could pull that down. And now this is going to be, getting small, like it's going further away. We could say we want a whole herd of mosquitoes, a murder of mosquitoes flying through the screen. We could just pull in some multiples, scatter those, and now we've got a bunch of them. Let's add more. This is my favorite gimmick in the world. And now they're just like cruising through the scene. Let's say we draw another path. These ones are coming through and it's like at a different speed because the path is shorter. So we'll go like that. And what we could do here is on this layer, maybe we could just like bring down the opacity and then put this one on top. And we move that frame on top, then those are like flying in the background. Pretty cool, right? That's pretty neat. All right, let's talk about something else. Okay, so let's say you drew this real stupid, well, I don't know. What is it, a slug? It's something. And it's just looking up at that other thing you drew. That doesn't make any sense. And you're like, oh, I want it to like, bob or dance and like, wiggle around or do some sort of movement. But like, I don't want to redraw these spots every time. And I don't even want to draw it again. Well, we could make something work. Let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go over down here and duplicate this. So we have 4 frames. So I'm going to come down to the second one. I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to choose frame, not all frames. And then I'm going to go to liquify. And I'm going to grab the warp and just make this pretty big. And then just sort of like push the whole thing over a little bit. You'll notice that the body's coming back a little bit, but I think I'll go back in and fix that after with a smaller brush. But for now, we'll just ignore that. And then I'm just sort of like following the onion skin so it's not getting too wild. And let's see if that looks like anything. There we go. Let's just just getting down a little bit. It's you know, it's it's a little stupid, it's a little silly, but you can see that if you spent more than a second doing it, you can make some cool little dance moves. If you're like, that's cool and all, but I want one on both sides. No problem. Watch. Duplicate, transform, all frames, flip it. We did all frames this time. And put this one over here. And you're like, okay, let's see. You're like, that's cool and all, but like, I just wish they weren't exactly the same color. Fine, no big deal. Watch this. I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna click on this appearance adjustment layer, and I'm gonna go to hue saturation, and I'm gonna make it a different color. Maybe it's an orange one. And you're like, hey, that's changing everything. It's fine. It's no big deal. Just wait. What we're gonna do is make this a clipping layer, clipping mask to that layer. So now we got an orange one and a red one, and they are just getting down, watching this thing fly in the sky. Can you believe it? Super fun. So one of my favorite things to do in Adobe Fresco is to just animate a bunch of nonsense in an image, just like going one thing at a time. Just draw a bunch of different things, then just keep adding movement to them, and just, you know, it just ends up getting crazy. So this is a chaotic, weird animation, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy this. I had fun doing it. And there's a lot of weird little things that I had to do here to kind of get it to do the things that I wanted it to do. So I'm going to show you some of those things here, and you know, show you some tips. So for example, here in this moon sky, we've got some twinkling stars. Put it in a group here because I'm so organized. And you'll see if we come down here, we've got 2 stars making that whole sky. You got this one and this one, just sort of twinkling a little bit. And I just sort of redrew it a few times and just made some of the legs a little bit shorter. And then in the path, I just used this grow shrink option to make them kind of go back a little bit. So the blue sequence is the same. Actually, it's not. It's just a single, I don't even have frame by frame there. It's just a few lines. And on the path, I did the same grow shrink option, and I brought it down to almost -100 so that they kind of pretty much disappear. And then I just added multiples and scattered them. And now we've got these, you know, twinkling stars in the sky. So another thing I did was have these squiggly lines following along this path. And that is pretty straightforward. So all I did was make this little sequence of a line wiggling. So it's just 3 frames of that wiggle going like wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And then what I did was I drew a path arcing along that curve. And as you can see, I started it way out here and then brought it all the way down here because I didn't want it to be going the whole time. In addition to that, I added multiples so that they'd be going the whole time. And I made that a clipping mask to that yellow thing. And the effect that that creates is that it's those wiggly lines following along that path. So they're just kind of going nonstop. Another thing I did is you'll see that there's like a weird little blob that comes in and goes into the skull's eye socket, but it doesn't happen all the time. You see it just sort of flows in. In order to create that effect where it just happens every now and then was pretty straightforward. Here it is. You can see the sequence starts at frame 16. So all I did was just add in blank frames by hitting the plus a bunch of times to just delay it happening. And then I did a bunch at the end as well. So as you can see here, nothing's happening, and then it comes in and goes in. Comes in and then goes. So that is one way you can get around not having a timeline where you can just drag the sequence out. You just have to build in however many frames that you need in order to time things out, which, you know, is not ideal, but I feel like it's something that is offset by how easy this makes it to just add a bunch of stuff frame by frame. Okay, so I think that sort of explains how I did pretty much everything else here. We've got that little light bulb happening. That's just a frame by frame sequence where I added in blank frames. Anything that is a little sequence that doesn't happen all the time is just blank frames. Just making sure that the sequences stay in the same ratios. Now there's one last thing that I think would really bring this all together, and that is to just have some rain coming from this cloud. I just, I can't draw anything else anymore. I can only draw one tiny little thing. That's all I can do right now. So let's see if we can make it work with that. So I'm gonna make a new frame underneath the cloud, and I'm just gonna grab this blue, and I'm gonna try as hard as I can to just, that's it. That's all I can do. All I can do is this one little thing. Is that gonna be enough? You bet your bottom raindrop it is. Ready? Draw the rain coming down. Add multiples. Let's scatter them. Look at that rain. Maybe we want it to rain harder. We didn't have to do anything, and we have a rainstorm with just one raindrop drawing. How cool is that? Okay, one more bonus tip. One issue that you can run into when you're animating a scene where you want something like kind of coming in is when you have pixel-based art and it goes beyond the artboard, it gets cut off. And that is not ideal. And when I was doing this space scene here, I wanted this a dragon to be, or snake dragon. What I think it's a dragon. It's some sort of alien. I wanted its head to come into the scene and kind of bob up and down a little bit, but it was tricky because the neck would come out of frame, and I could draw it down lower and then move it up, but it was a struggle. Anyway, I discovered, or I remembered, that if you draw in vector, you can put things outside of the artboard. It's not constrained to the artboard. So I just drew this little dragon guy in vector, which wasn't that tricky because, well, for my style, it works out well. But I was just drawing this with my classic inker from my Retro Supplyco set, and I made those gritty vector presets, and the Sharpie in there is emulated off of my classic inker, so they work seamlessly together. So you can see here, when I play it, it gets cropped off, but you can see in the artwork, it goes beyond our artboard. That might be a handy tip for you. One thing that I do want to point out about Adobe Fresco's motion tools is that although they're really powerful and you can do a lot of stuff with them, this isn't an app that is suited for creating like an animated short or some sort of longer sequential thing. The reason for that is because Adobe Fresco doesn't have one universal timeline. Each layer gets its own timeline, and that makes a lot of things super easy and really fun, which I'm going to show you in this video. But because there's not one overall timeline that you can stagger things across, it's more about looping continuous movement. So if you're trying to add motion to an otherwise static illustration or just have something that loops, Fresco is fantastic for that kind of thing. I hope there was some useful tips in here that helped you figure out something that you were trying to do in Fresco, or maybe you haven't tried the animation stuff at all. And I would imagine, seeing how easy it is, you're ready to make some stuff move. If you do make some stuff move and you post it on social media somewhere, make sure you tag me at Chris Piascik. I would love to check it out. Let me know if this has been a good talk. Let me know which of these animation things is your favorite. Let me know in the comments. I wanna hear what you like about Fresco. Is there anything else you are struggling with that you want me to address in an upcoming video? Maybe I'll do that too. Let me know below. Been a good talk. I will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Was it my Elvis impression? What? Where did that come from? All right, I gotta go.